Today, we are getting back to basics because sometimes you just need to go back to the basics, you know? We're talking about the foundation of literally every single pantry. Flour, sugar, salt, rice, and a few other essentials that most of us use every single day. Hello, everybody, and welcome to SuttonsDaze. If you're new here, my name is Lisa. We are all about pantry preparedness. Now, these might seem simple. You can buy them anywhere. They're inexpensive, and they last a while. I'll explain more about that later. But here's the thing. If you don't store them correctly, if you don't store them properly, you will lose money, flavor, and quality. Sometimes even the entire purchase. And that's not why we do what we do, right? So in today's video, I am going to chat with you about how to store these everyday staples so that they'll be fresh, so they'll be bug-free, because that's important, and ready to use whether you're cooking dinner tonight or planning for long-term storage. Stick around to the end because I'll show you my favorite containers and how to make your basics last for years, not months. Why the basics matter. Seems like a pretty simple thing, but just in case, before we talk about containers and oxygen absorbers and Mylar and all that stuff, right, we're going to start with the why, because the why is important and you need to make sure that your why is the same for these items, because not everybody has the same things, not everybody can use the same things. So if you don't have the why, then you know not to store it, you know. These are your building blocks. At the end of the day, these are your building blocks. The ingredients that turn random cans and jars into actual meals, into actual things that you will consume. They're also some of the most affordable items to bulk buy. Or if you can't bulk buy anything, you can get a little bit of each one and use your extra budget for groceries to be able to stock these up. But that affordability is one reason why prices can shift really fast. Wheat, sugar, and rice are traded globally. And when costs spike, it hits every single grocery shelf quickly. When you buy and store these basics properly, you protect yourself from those price jumps. That's the insurance part of it. That is why your pantry is the best insurance money can buy. You can avoid price jumps. You can avoid food waste. You can guarantee you can always make something comforting when life throws you a curveball. That's what your pantry's for. When you have the basics covered, the rest of the pantry builds itself really easily. I mean, you'll be able to watch it in real time. It's fantastic. So let's walk through how to store each one the right way, because that makes all the difference in the world. Let's talk about flour. Somewhere there's a bunch of people apparently on the internet telling you that commercially ground flour, when put into Mylar, will last for years. No, it won't. That's not the way it works, okay? Commercially ground flour is altered, number one. It takes a lot of the nutritional element out of it. It bleaches it, or it strips it of, you know, different properties so that it can last on the shelves for a hot minute, but it's not a long-term storage item. And a lot of it depends on your immediate conditions, where you live, the temperatures where you live, the consistent or not consistent temperature in your pantry. I mean, all of this factors in. So there's no one answer to cover everything, okay? And I know that flummoxes a lot of folks, but there's a reason, okay? Commercially ground flour is a byproduct of stripping down wheat. And it's just not meant to last forever. Flour is something that a lot of us use almost every day, every week, you know. We use it enough to keep it on hand because it has so many applications. Aside from bread and biscuits and cakes and pies, and you know, it makes pasta. I mean, you use it to make a roux, for gravy. There's a ton of reasons for flour. But what I'm going to tell you is practical purposeful storage information, okay? So mileage may vary, but for the most part, this is the standard rule. If somebody tells you to vacuum seal you're going to destroy your vacuum sealer if you don't do it right, vacuum seal flour in Mylar bags and it will last you 10 years. No, it won't. It just won't, because that is a real general statement, and I have yet to find anybody that has been successful with that kind of long-term storage. So here's how I recommend storing commercially ground flour. For the short-term use, I keep flour in airtight containers, okay? So whether it's the canister on my counter or the 5-gallon food grade bucket with a gamma lid on it, that is what I work out of on the consistent basis. When that's empty, I refill it from other areas in my house. If you don't use enough to warrant a 5-gallon bucket of it over a certain time frame, then, keep it in smaller containers. Glass jars, food grade bins, those are the best things. In a cool, dark spot away from heat and moisture. That's it right there. No heat, no moisture. It needs to be cool, and it needs to be airtight. For long term, which at tops, commercially ground flour will last a year to 2 years, because it's just not meant to last longer than that. So if you're planning on purchasing a bulk amount of commercially ground flour, my recommendation is to only purchase the amount that you need for 1 to 2 years. And then make sure that wherever you keep that storage in airtight containers, okay, make sure that it stays cool and dark and dry, because humidity and heat will make it go bad that much faster. Literally, 1 to 2 years is as long as you're going to get out of it, and it will start to go rancid. How do you know when it goes rancid? All you have to do is smell it. It will smell off. It will smell like it is souring, it'll just smell wrong. You'll be able to smell it. And that alone should send off warning bells to you, okay? One trick that a lot of people do is they take their flour, they put it into the freezer, and that will theoretically kill any hitchhikers that come in with your flour. That's been something that people have done for as long as freezers have been around, I guess. If you keep your flour in the freezer, it's like turning off the clock. It will definitely last longer than 1 to 2 years, as long as you have power, I don't ever count on the fact that we're going to have power. We're going to retain power. My concern has always been that when you introduce something into an environment like a freezer, that it introduces moisture. And so when you pull it out of the freezer, you have to be able to let it come back down to room temperature, okay? And make sure that it's dry and that no moisture has been introduced to it, and then put it into your containers. It's just something that you have to watch to make sure that you're doing it right so that it doesn't go bad. I stopped adding stuff to my freezer many years ago because I just found that it gave too many opportunities for failure. I don't have time for failure. So I don't freeze it, and I don't have issues with it. I mean, literally none. Now, maybe you live in the South where it's more likely that you will have issues with it, That could be. That's something to definitely factor in. That is a personal decision that only you can make. I don't do it. It doesn't make sense for me. I have never had an issue with it. And so I just put it into the bucket or the airtight containers, and I'm good. If it makes you feel better, okay, then you can put it into Mylar or the glass jars and add an oxygen absorber. I'm a firm believer that oxygen kills the hitchhikers. No air, no breathe, no way, okay? That's an option also instead of the freezer. But I honestly don't go that far either. Always remember to label those containers when you put it in there, because it's a good practice to be in, period, for anything that you add to your pantry. And because if you use different types of flour, you won't be able to tell the difference unless you label them. And be sure to put the date of when you added it so that you can do the math to figure out how long you have before it's not really viable. Rice is one of the easiest most affordable, and most reliable long-term staples to store. And that's good because a lot of people use a lot of rice. White rice stored correctly can last 25 years or more, literally, but it's got to be white rice. Jasmine, basmati, whatever, white rice, okay? But if you use brown rice, then while yes, it's good for you, it has a lower glycemic index, but it has a natural oil in it that really doesn't lend itself to long-term storage. Like the commercially ground flour, it will go rancid, but it goes rancid in about 6 months. So that's something that you want to keep an eye on. If you regularly eat brown rice, then don't store more than 6 months worth because it just won't last, and then you're just wasting money. For everyday use, I keep my white rice in half-gallon mason jars, that are airtight. I put some of it into mason jars for storage on my shelf. At that point, I vacuum seal it. I don't really use oxygen absorbers in there, but you can. But I just vacuum seal it and it stays closed. I put the ring on to ensure that it stays closed. For long-term storage, though, because this is one of those things that you definitely can purchase in bulk and know that you have for a very long time, I use Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. And then I take those Mylar bags and I put them into 5-gallon buckets. That's kind of like a double protection on the rice. Number one, the Mylar keeps it in the dark and it's secured away from any moisture or the air in general, okay? But then when you put it into the bucket, it also prevents, if by any chance you get critters coming in, it prevents them from chewing through the Mylar. Yes, mice can chew through Mylar, but if you put it in the bucket, it's like a whole nother layer of protection for it, and it's easier to stack that way. So it's a really great thing to keep in mind as you're moving forward and building your long-term storage. Now, if you love brown rice and that's just the only thing you want, okay, you can freeze it in vacuum sealed portions and then it will last longer as long as we have power. So it's one of those things, if you have the freezer space, you can keep it in a freezer and it stops the clock, just like with anything else, okay? That extends the life and prevents those oils from going rancid. And same thing, when they go rancid, you'll know, you'll smell it. And if you don't smell it, you'll definitely taste it. The key with rice is to keep it cool, dry, and sealed tight. Sealed tight. And always just keep it out of the light if, it's in clear jars. It's really just as simple as that. Number 4 is sugar. And I know we've got a lot of people, I'm always getting questions about the sugar, and a few people come to me after the fact, and I'm like, oh God, I hope this is not too late. But sugar. The good news, sugar doesn't expire, period. Sugar does not expire. The bad news, it's easy to ruin if you store it wrong. You can't have everything, right? Never, and I mean never, use oxygen absorbers with your sugar. It'll turn it into a rock hard brick. You'll have to chisel off what you need. Not what you want to do. It's not a good practice, okay? Instead, you want to store it in airtight containers like mason jars, Mylar, plastic buckets, with the gamma lids on them, or without the gamma lids. You can, for long-term storage, you can just get the regular lids because they've got a gasket on there, and that makes them airtight. Anything that is airtight, okay? You can, those terracotta little discs that you can put in with your brown sugar. You can put those in your real sugar too, your plain sugar. They work just as effectively. It's to keep it from clumping up. It's to keep it fresh. Even a slice of bread for a day or two will re-soften it if it hardens. It just pulls the moisture out of the sugar and into the bread. It's great. The biggest enemy of sugar is moisture. It will lock you up so bad, okay? You just won't be able to use it. So keep it dry, and it will literally last indefinitely. Airtight is always the best measure because nothing can get in, and it just protects it a little bit more. Salt is about as easy as it gets. It's a mineral, okay? They pull it from the ground. It doesn't spoil. It does not go bad. And it doesn't need an oxygen absorber either. Just like sugar, you will turn that salt into a rock-solid brick. if you put an oxygen absorber in there, at which point you've got a salt lick. Yay, you know. The only thing that can happen over time is clumping, especially with iodized salt. Now, the iodine attracts a bit of moisture over time. Nature of the beast, okay? But for long-term storage, I prefer non-iodized salt, so I'll get Himalayan salt, I'll get sea salt, I'll get kosher salt, you know, all the salts that have no iodine, like canning salt even works. You can, it's not just for canning, you can use it all the time. You can leave salt in its original container or transfer it into jars and buckets with tight-fitting lids because, again, moisture is your enemy. Keep it dry and you're done. That's it. Poof, okay? Airtight container, dry. Poof. It's like magic. I always keep a few different types of salt. Canning salt for preservation, kosher salt or sea salt for cooking, Himalayan salt for everyday use, you know. I even have the iodized salt because it's not bad for you either. It all has its place in your life, one way or another. Does that mean you need every kind? No, you don't. You need what you use. That's what you need. While we're talking about basics, let's hit a few other that, you know, deserve some attention. Baking powder and baking soda. Baking powder is a short-term storage item. It really is only good for about 1.5 years, 2 years tops. So don't buy huge amounts unless it's something that you use to warrant that amount, okay? 6 months, 2 years tops. Now, baking soda lasts indefinitely. It's fantastic. And I have a whole video that I'll link at the end of this one to show you all the different ways that you can use it. Baking soda is like this little miracle thing. It's kind of like apple cider vinegar, you know. People think it cures the world, but you can use it for a whole bunch of stuff. If you want to test your baking powder because you're not sure when you got it, you don't know how old it is, you want to make sure it's good before you put all the work and effort to only have your product not turn out because of your baking powder, mix a little bit with warm water. If it fizzes, it's still good. Those are fun tips and tricks, aren't they? Yeast. Yeast is another one of those fantastic things that is a basic to have around. Not everybody is a sourdough lover, you know? So unopened packets, like those little envelopes, can last for years if you keep them in the freezer. If you don't keep them in the freezer, they're going to go bad after time. And it's normally exactly when you need them. You'll find out that they're not good, okay? Any yeast, whether you get it in the jar, whether you get it in the packet, whether you get, like I do, I get it in the bricks, the 1 pound bricks. And I have a stock of yeast that I'm working off of from 4 years ago. I bought it. I got a bulk purchase of it, stuck it in my freezer, and I think I'm finally down to like the last 3 bricks. Works like a dream every time. When I need to use it, I will pull a brick out and empty it into mason jars and then keep those mason jars in my refrigerator until they're gone. And it stays good. I have never had a problem with my yeast going bad as long as it was in the freezer or when opened, put into the refrigerator. It will not last on your shelves for a long time, whether it's in the packet, whether it's in the brick, or whether it's in a glass jar. Doesn't matter. It won't last a really long time on your shelf. It's just one of those picky things that does better when you stop the clock in the freezer. Now, cornmeal and oats, because, you know, both contain natural oils. Okay, so I treat them kind of like I do flour, you know. Now, steel-cut oats will last up to 10 years. So it's not a forever food, but it will last up to 10 years. So you can store that. Go right ahead. The more processed that it is, the shorter the shelf life that you have. So learn how to make your own instant oatmeal, you know, and keep rotating out that long-term storage that you have. But cornmeal does have some natural oils in it also. So you want to make sure that you are putting it into airtight containers, Mylar bags, vacuum sealed jars, you know, whatever the case. Make sure it stays cool, dark, and dry, and you're good for probably about 5-ish years with the cornmeal. So it won't go bad tomorrow, but it's not going to last you forever. The goal is consistency. Whatever you're storing, protect it from air, light, and heat and moisture. And extreme cold, because some things don't do good in the extreme cold. That's why we can't just randomly store buckets of stuff in the garage. You know, it doesn't work. Let's talk about some storage methods because there's a bunch of different ones. So we're going to break this down. I kind of graphed it out a little bit. So you've got airtight jars, okay? Those are best used for daily use, 6 to 12 months that you have products online. So if you know you're going to use it within a year, go ahead and store it in glass jars. And then just make sure that you keep them cool, dark, and dry. Vacuum sealed bags, so the ones that you can see through, okay, are mid-term storage. So that's your medium, short-term kind of thing. 1 to 2 years is great for some things. Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, that's your long-term storage. Those are for the things that you know you're going to stock up enough and will last 10 to 25 years. That's when Mylar becomes something that you should consider. Freezing, okay, definitely is best for pest control. But like I said, with rice or with flour, I generally don't do it because it adds moisture to it. You have to let it come back down to room temperature. And there's, in my mind, there is too much too many variables to ensure that you're getting it properly dry to store it the way that you need to. If you put it into Mylar bag or a glass jar, or you vacuum seal it, you're basically taking all of the air out of there, okay? And so nothing lives without air. They're not gonna bother you. They're not gonna bother it. If it suddenly releases its seal, then it's possible that you'll go grab a bag and you'll see that there's stuff moving around in there, at which point, take that bag and go like that, It's a risk you take, but it's something that you need to factor in on your own. If you can find a way to make sure that you're getting all of the moisture out, then freeze off. It's just fantastic. And always remember, no matter what it is or how you store it, always label it, always date it. Let's talk about some common mistakes that I see pretty much all the time. Using oxygen absorbers in salt or sugar. Simple, don't do it, ever. Don't ever do it. Yep. That's your simple rule, okay? Storing dry goods in warm areas is another thing I see people doing. Heat shortens shelf life. Absolutely. That's all there is to it. Heat shortens shelf life. Forgetting to label and rotate. That's how you waste food. That's how you waste money. And that's not why we do this. Leaving bags directly on the floor. Yeah. Condensation can ruin literally everything. Get stuff up off the floor. And that's just one of the reasons to get it up off the floor, okay? So there you have it. The true basics of pantry storage, okay? Flour, sugar, salt, rice, and their friends might not look exciting, and I get that. It's like, ooh, it's not all the fancy stuff, okay? But they're the quiet heroes of your kitchen because they're in so many things. They're used for so many things. And so being able to stock up on those properly ensures that you have what you need when you need it. Because when you store properly, you're not just saving money, you're saving peace of mind. And goodness knows we need more of that right now, right? You're making sure that your pantry is always ready to serve you, your family, and anyone who needs a little help along the way. Let me know in the comments section if this answered any of your questions or if you have any follow-up questions. If you want to see more about different storage methods, check out this video right here. And if you want to see more about all the things you can do with baking soda, check this video right here. Until next time, everybody, be safe. Keep stacking it to the rafters, my friends.